Gavin Cole had added my fingerprint to his smart lock again and again, but somehow it was always good for only one visit. Every time he enrolled it, he would say, "Come over whenever you want. You're always welcome here." Yet whenever I returned, the lock gave me the same message. Fingerprint not recognized. Locked out yet again, I stared at the scanner glowing red and called Gavin. He answered in that familiar, apologetic tone. "Sorry. A childhood friend was messing around with the lock yesterday and accidentally deleted your fingerprint while trying it out. Hang on for now. I'll add it back the next time I'm home." There it was again, next time. I stood there with the phone in my hand, suddenly remembering all the excuses he had given me the previous times my fingerprint disappeared. 2 deletions ago, he blamed a system update, even though Vanessa Hale's fingerprint had survived just fine. The last time he claimed the lock had broken, so he'd replaced the keypad. In reality, Vanessa had merely complained that storing too many fingerprints was unsafe. Every time, Gavin had another perfectly plausible accident that allowed him to indulge Vanessa's need to have the apartment all to herself. He was still talking on the other end of the call. "Just wait until I get back. I'll let you in." But the second the call ended, a sharp click came from inside the apartment. Vanessa knew I was outside. She had thrown the deadbolt. I got to my feet and brushed the dust from my pants. Forget it. I didn't want to go through that door anymore. Cold night air slipped down my collar, making me shiver. I wiped at my face. I wasn't crying. My eyes were dry, it was just the wind. I stood by the curb outside the apartment complex and pulled out my phone to order a ride. "Hey, what are you doing here?" I looked up and saw Ryan Bennett approaching with a convenience store bag. Ryan was a mutual friend of Gavin and Vanessa's, and he lived in the same apartment complex. "Here to see Gavin?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "The deadbolt's on. I can't get in." Ryan frowned, looking confused. "Vanessa's here, isn't she? She just sent a voice note to the group saying she was cooking at Gavin's and told us to come over for drinks." Ryan kept talking, oblivious to how pale I had gone. "Does she come over a lot?" I asked. He laughed. "All the time. She knows her way into Gavin's place better than anyone. We always joke that she's practically the woman of the house." Only after the words were out did he realize what he had said. He stopped, visibly embarrassed. He cleared his throat. "I didn't mean it like that." I tried to smile and say it was fine, but my throat had closed up. Ryan's phone chimed with a group chat notification. I caught sight of the group name on his screen. Gavin's crew. Vanessa had just sent a voice note, followed by several teasing reaction gifs from the others. I could even make out a few replies, including, "On my way. Save me some ribs." Ryan quickly locked his phone and said sheepishly, Do you want to come upstairs with me? Maybe she's busy cooking and didn't hear you knocking. We're all friends anyway." Apparently we were all friends. I was Gavin's girlfriend, but in their circle, I was nothing more than an unwanted outsider. I shook my head. "No thanks." Then I turned and headed toward the street. After a few steps, I still couldn't resist checking my phone. His last message was still on the screen. "Gavin, give me a few minutes. I'll be there soon to let you in." 10 minutes had passed, and he still hadn't shown up. When I turned my phone back on the next morning, 2 missed calls appeared on the screen, along with 2 messages from the night before. Gavin, "Why didn't you wait for me?" Gavin, "Vanessa was cooking so I couldn't get away. Let me know when you get home." Before I could reply, Gavin called. The thing with the lock was Vanessa's doing. I already spoke to her about it. Then he added, "Ryan and the others are getting together for dinner tonight. Come with us. We're all friends. You'll get to know everyone eventually." I didn't want to go, but I agreed anyway. When I entered the restaurant's private dining room, Vanessa had already taken the seat at the head of the table. She patted the chair beside her. "Gavin, sit here." I moved to take the seat on Gavin's right, but another friend slid into it first. "Come on, I'm sitting next to Gavin. We need to have a couple of drinks." Vanessa leaned around him, glanced at me and smiled. "Then sit across from him. You'll have the best view from there." That left me in the seat farthest from Gavin. Through the steam rising from the sizzling platters between us, I watched Vanessa lean toward him as she spoke, her hair nearly brushing his shoulder. A platter of crab legs arrived. Vanessa prodded them with her fork and said in a playful, pouty voice, "Gavin, crack these for me. I'm terrible at it." Without hesitation, Gavin transferred one to his plate and began cracking the shell. The steam had turned his fingers slightly red, but he didn't seem to care. Vanessa speared a piece of crab meat, took a bite, then held the rest out to Gavin. "Try it, Gavin. It's really fresh." He ate it straight off her fork, his lips brushing the spot where she had bitten. One of their friends teased, "You two have been like this forever. Aren't you worried his actual girlfriend might get jealous?" Vanessa laughed. "Gavin's been cracking crab for me since we were kids. His girlfriend isn't that petty, right?" She turned to look at me. Everyone else at the table followed her gaze. I stiffened, then forced a smile. "It's fine." After eating for a while, Vanessa pushed her plate toward Gavin. "Gavin, this steak is too tough for me." He glanced at it, transferred the meat to his own plate, cut it into smaller pieces and slid it back to her. He never said a word. The whole thing came so naturally to him that it looked like he had done it 1,000 times. One of their friends remarked, "You two are so in sync. Guess that's what growing up together does." Vanessa smiled and turned to Gavin. "Remember when we were in college and you came to visit me on campus? My roommate thought you were my boyfriend and insisted on buying us dinner." Gavin smiled. "Your roommate was certainly enthusiastic." "She really was," Vanessa said. "She kept asking when we were getting married." As she spoke, her gaze flicked toward me, carrying the faintest hint of smug satisfaction. Then she reached over and straightened Gavin's shirt collar. Her fingertips brushed his collarbone. "Your collar was crooked." Nobody else at the table batted an eye. I watched her hand linger at his collar for 2 seconds before she finally pulled it away. Gavin didn't pull away. He was already used to it. Later, Vanessa stood to get another drink. As she rose, a wineglass slipped from her hand, splashing red wine down the front of my white dress. Before I could say anything, Gavin had already grabbed Vanessa's hand and turned it over to inspect it. "Did you cut yourself? Did the glass break?" Vanessa shook her head and said she was fine. Then she gave me a wounded look. "I'm so sorry. Was that dress expensive? I'll replace it." Wine ran down the fabric and dripped onto my shoes. Gavin never looked at me once. "I'm going to the restroom," I said. When I stepped outside the private dining room, I heard Vanessa lower her voice. "Gavin, do you think your girlfriend's upset? Did I make her mad?" Gavin answered, "She isn't like that. Don't overthink it." Vanessa laughed. "Good. I was afraid you'd stop talking to me because of her." Muffled laughter followed. I stood outside the door, just as I had outside Gavin's apartment the night before. Suddenly, the whole situation seemed ridiculous. The people inside were the ones who belonged. I was always the one left outside. When dinner ended, everyone filed out of the restaurant and said their goodbyes. They gathered in small groups along the curb to wait for their rides. I naturally headed toward Gavin's car and reached for the front passenger door. Vanessa hurried around from the other side and pushed past me. She smiled. "Let me sit up front. I get carsick and sitting in the back makes it so much worse." Before she had even finished speaking, she opened the door, climbed in and fastened her seat belt. The entire sequence was so smooth, as if she had done it countless times before. Then she turned to Gavin. "Come on, Gavin. Let's go." Gavin glanced at me, his tone perfectly casual. "Vanessa really does get carsick. You can sit in the back." I pressed my lips together and opened the rear door. The car pulled away. Vanessa casually opened the glove compartment and took out a bag of nuts. She ate a few herself, then held one to Gavin's mouth. "Open up." Gavin leaned toward her hand and took it from her fingers. His lips brushed her fingertips. "Gavin, Jordan and the others are planning a trip to that new campground next weekend. Are you going?" Vanessa asked. "Yeah. I haven't gotten out in a while," Gavin said. "Then I'm coming too. You're taking this SUV, right? I'll ride with you." "Sure. I'll pick you up." Vanessa smiled. "It's a deal then. Don't flake on me again." She reached over and poked his arm. I sat in the back seat, listening to them discuss their plans for the following weekend as my fingers dug into my palm. I knew nothing about the camping trip. Gavin had never mentioned it to me. At a red light, Vanessa pulled out her phone and held it up for Gavin to see. Derek's hounding me about that proposal again. Look at what he's asking for. Is he out of his mind? Gavin glanced at the screen. Just structure it logically. Don't let him throw you off. Vanessa put her phone away and sighed. You're the only one who gets me. When I try explaining it to anyone else, they have no idea why I'm so frustrated. As we neared Gavin's apartment, Vanessa suddenly began coughing. At first, the coughs were light, as if her throat were irritated. Then they came faster and faster. She clutched her chest and leaned back against the seat, her voice weak. Gavin! I can't breathe. Gavin immediately slowed down and pulled over, his tone changing in an instant. Where's your inhaler? Did you bring it? Vanessa shook her head, her breathing coming faster and faster. I forgot to bring it. Gavin reached over and patted her back with practiced ease. He turned toward her, keeping one hand on the steering wheel while rubbing her back up and down with the other. After several ragged breaths, Vanessa suddenly turned toward me in the back seat and frowned. Did you put on perfume or something? I really can't handle that smell. I'm not wearing perfume, I said. Vanessa ignored me. Her coughing worsened until she was curled up in the passenger seat. Gavin glanced at me. His expression carried the kind of irritation that said I should have known better. Nora, are you sure you didn't put on anything scented? I didn't. He didn't question me again. He looked out the window and fell silent for several seconds before saying, We're not that far from my place. Nora, you can walk the rest of the way. Before I could react, Gavin was already out of the car and pulling open the rear passenger door. Cold night air rushed in and struck my face, sending a shiver through me. I got out and stood by the side of the road. The moment the door closed, I heard Vanessa's weak voice from the front seat. Gavin, take me to the ER. I feel really sick. I watched the car disappear down the road, and the whole thing suddenly felt absurd. The streets were deserted at that hour. My jacket was thin enough that the wind cut straight through it. I hadn't wanted to go back to Gavin's apartment. I truly hadn't. But my property transfer deed was still sitting on the desk in his home office. It was the original my mother had finally mailed from back home after repeated reminders, and it was the only original I had. If I left it there, the trip she had made to the title company would have been for nothing. I hailed a cab and gave the driver Gavin's address. The cab dropped me off outside his building. I let myself in with the code he had given me that evening. Warm yellow light fell across the desk, illuminating my document envelope. The envelope was open. The deed inside had been torn in half. The paper was crumpled and covered in large water stains. The ink had bled, smearing the notary's seal and the signatures into an illegible blur. I picked up the two halves, my fingers trembling against the torn edges. It was a property transfer deed. My mother was transferring the house back home into my name. It was originally supposed to be mailed to my apartment, but when Gavin heard about it he said, "Have her mail it here. I know someone at the county clerk's recording office. I'll take care of the filing so your mom doesn't have to deal with all that." Now it was ruined. To replace it, my mother would have to make another trip to the title company, mail another original, and wait at least another month. My mother's health couldn't handle going through all of that again. I stared down at 2 months of work reduced to 2 torn pieces of paper. A faint shoe print marked one of them. I called Gavin. The phone rang for a long time before he finally answered. His voice was low, edged with exhaustion and impatience. "I'm at the ER. Vanessa's on oxygen. What is it?" "My property transfer deed," I said. "The one on the desk in your office. Someone tore it up and poured water all over it." He was silent for 2 seconds. "I can't deal with that right now. The doctor said if we'd gotten here any later, she could have been in serious danger. That deed was from my mom." He cut me off, his voice turning cold, as though he had become someone else. "Do you seriously have to bring this up right now? Vanessa had an asthma attack and it could have ended badly. Do you understand that? Just get another deed. Stop blaming her for everything." He paused, then added, "She's still on oxygen. Try to be reasonable." The call ended. A new Instagram post from Vanessa appeared on my phone. "Had an asthma attack and Gavin brought me to the ER. Thank God he was there." One of the comments read, "Gavin playing Prince Charming again." Suddenly I felt exhausted. It wasn't sadness or anger. It was a bone-deep weariness that seemed to seep through every part of me. I locked my phone and started putting the torn deed into my bag. As I gathered the papers, my hand bumped the mouse on the desk. The computer screen lit up. A hotel booking site was open, and the My Trips tab showed an unread notification. Your stay is complete. Tell us how it went. The mouse was right beside me, so I clicked. The reservation details appeared. The booking was under Gavin Cole's name, with Vanessa Hale listed as the second guest. It was for a king room at a hot springs resort outside the city. The special request field read, a room with a private mineral soaking tub. The reservation was from 3 months earlier. During the trip Gavin had called a business trip. I froze. It felt as though a fist had closed around everything inside me. I left the page open. My eyes moved to a DoorDash shortcut on the browser's bookmarks bar. Clicked it. In the order history, I found a delivery to the same resort from that same weekend 3 months earlier. The order had been placed at 10:47 p.m. It included 2 cups of mulled wine, a fruit platter, and a box of condoms. The order had been placed through Gavin's account. My eyes stayed fixed on the words, a box of condoms, until the screen went dark and my reflection appeared against the black glass. I suddenly remembered the message I had sent Gavin that night. Me. How's the business trip? Are you exhausted? Gavin replied. Not bad. Get some sleep. So I had gone to sleep. Meanwhile, he had ordered a box of condoms and had them delivered to the king room he was sharing with Vanessa. I set the mouse down. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't throw or break anything. I simply pulled my old suitcase from the closet and packed everything I had brought to his apartment. As the door closed behind me, the electronic lock's voice echoed through the empty hallway. Door locked. I didn't look back. There was nothing left to look back at. Vanessa sat propped up in the hospital bed, already looking much better than she had when she arrived. Gavin, I'm feeling much better. Don't worry, she said softly. Gavin sat in the molded plastic chair beside her. Okay, he murmured without looking up. He sent Nora a message. Gavin. Are you asleep? 5 minutes passed without a reply. He sent another. Gavin. I'll look at the deed when I get home tomorrow. Don't be mad. The emergency room gradually quieted in the early hours of the morning. Gavin leaned back and closed his eyes, but he couldn't sleep. All he could think about was Nora's last message. Nora. No need. 2 simple words, clean and final, like a door closing. He remembered her birthday the month before. He had sent her some money through Venmo with the note. Buy yourself something you like. Nora replied. Thank you. That was all. He hadn't thought anything of it at the time. Looking back, maybe that was when she had stopped expecting anything from him. Vanessa was discharged after daybreak. The nurse said there was nothing seriously wrong and told her to rest at home. Gavin handled the discharge paperwork and drove her home. Vanessa sat in the front passenger seat, her voice soft and slightly clingy. Gavin, last night scared me to death. Thank God you were there. Bring your inhaler with you from now on, Gavin said. Vanessa smiled. With you around, I'm not afraid of anything. Gavin didn't respond. He placed his phone face up on the center console. At the first red light, he glanced down at it. No messages. At the second red light, he checked again. Still nothing. After dropping Vanessa off, Gavin didn't go upstairs. He stayed in the car. He thought about all the times he had helped Vanessa move, fixed her plumbing, and brought her meals. He had always believed those were things he should do. They were childhood friends, and living alone in the city hadn't been easy for her. But as he stared at Nora's last message, he suddenly realized that he had never once asked whether life had been hard for Nora during all the time he had ignored her. My Amtrak train left at 2 in the morning. I had booked a coach seat, and only a handful of passengers were scattered through the car. I blocked Gavin's number and archived our WhatsApp chat, keeping it out of my main inbox. By daybreak, I had arrived in Tampa. I found a budget hotel near the station. The front desk clerk asked how long I planned to stay. I'm not sure yet, I said. I'll see how it goes. Once I reached my room, I set down my suitcase, opened Indeed on my phone, and started looking through job listings in Tampa. Gavin returned to his apartment. He kicked off his shoes and walked into the living room. A throw pillow on the couch was still slightly crumpled from the last time Nora had held it. He walked over and smoothed it flat, then stood in the middle of the room and looked around. He couldn't say exactly what was wrong, but the apartment felt much emptier. He opened the door to his home office. The desk was bare. The document envelope was gone. He froze for a moment, then walked over and searched through the drawers. The few belongings Nora had kept there were gone too. He took out his phone and called her. It rang for a long time, but she didn't answer. He called again and the call was declined. The third call went to voicemail again. She had blocked his number. Gavin stood in front of the closet with the phone in his hand for a long time. Only then did he truly believe that Nora wasn't simply angry. She had left. He drove to her apartment. The moment he pushed open the door, he knew something was wrong. A lot of things were missing from the living room, and more than half the closet was empty. Yet the floor was spotless, and the stovetop had been polished until it gleamed. She had even taken out the trash. Standing in her empty living room, one word came to him: retreat. She hadn't run away. She had made a clean, orderly retreat. Gavin sat down on the couch, and his fingers brushed against a black hair tie wedged between the cushions. She must have missed it while she was packing. He held it in his hand for a long time before closing his fist around it. After 3 years, the only thing Nora had left behind was a single black hair tie. I stayed at the hotel for 2 days. On the third morning, I interviewed at a design firm. The interviewer was a woman in her 30s, the firm's design director. She flipped through several pages of my portfolio and nodded. "Your work has a clean aesthetic. What made you leave your last job and relocate?" I thought for a moment. I needed a change of scenery. She didn't press me. She closed the portfolio and said, "That'll be all. We'll be in touch next week." I stood and thanked her. On my way out of the conference room, I passed through the open plan office. Someone carrying a coffee walked past me and casually asked, "You new here?" Before I could answer, a coworker called them away. The office was busy, and no one went out of their way to pay attention to anyone else. To my surprise, I liked it. The sun was shining when I stepped outside. My phone buzzed with a text from HR. "HR, you got the job. Your first day is next Monday." I stood on an unfamiliar street and read the message twice. Gavin sat in Nora's half-empty apartment. The sunlight had shifted from the left side of the windowsill toward the center, casting a slanted band of light across the floor. He began replaying everything that had happened over the past few days, starting with Nora's fingerprint disappearing from its lock. He remembered how calm she had sounded when she called him. What had he been thinking at the time? Vanessa was cooking, and he hadn't wanted to upset her. He hadn't once wondered whether Nora was cold while she stood outside. Then he remembered the weekend 3 months earlier at the Hot Springs resort. Vanessa had said, "Gavin, I ordered some wine. Let's have it in the room." He had drunk it. What happened afterward came rushing back when he closed his eyes. Vanessa had been wearing his shirt, the collar hanging open and her hair still wet. The box of condoms he had ordered sat open on the nightstand. At the time, he had told himself it was the alcohol. Now he understood that it wasn't. It was betrayal. He had taken a shower, gotten dressed, and acted as though nothing had happened. When he returned home, Nora had been cooking in the kitchen. She turned and asked, "Was the business trip exhausting?" "Not really," he had said. Gavin opened Instagram and found Vanessa's account. Her post from the emergency room was still there. One comment read, "Gavin playing Prince Charming again." Vanessa had replied, "He's always been like that. Ever since we were kids." He stared at her reply for a long time before calling her. "Was that asthma attack in the car real? Or were you faking it?" The other end of the line was silent for several seconds. Then Vanessa began to cry. "What is that supposed to mean, Gavin? I've dealt with this for over 20 years, and you're seriously asking whether I faked it?" Gavin said nothing. On Monday morning, I reported to my new job. Someone from HR showed me around, pointing out the restrooms, the break room, and the fire extinguishers. Finally, she led me to an empty workstation. A woman with short hair sat at the desk beside mine. "Hey, you must be the new hire." "I'm Mia." "I'm Nora," I said. "Nice to meet you, Nora. Come to lunch with me. I'll show you around." I sat down, placed my mug in the corner of the desk, and turned on the computer while I waited for IT to finish setting it up. Mia had already put her headphones back on and returned to work, humming softly under her breath. No one made a point of coming over to meet the new hire, but no one ignored me either. The distance felt just right, neither too close nor too distant. Mia really did come to get me at lunchtime. We carried our trays into the office complex's food hall. It wasn't far, but she talked the entire way. She told me which counter served the best food, that the coffee shop downstairs offered the second latte for half price, and that everyone could dress casually on Friday afternoons. She spoke so easily that I didn't have to work to keep the conversation going. For a moment, the feeling was almost disorienting. Making friends hadn't been like this in my old city. After I entered Gavin's social circle, I had spent so much time trying to fit in. Ryan's favorite beer was Miller Lite. Jordan worked in marketing for a real estate company. I had even memorized which people in Gavin's crew had beef with each other, apparently because there had been some confusion over splitting a dinner bill. I kept all of it in notes on my phone and reviewed them before every gathering. I was afraid I would say the wrong thing, let the conversation die, or make Gavin's friends think I was difficult to be around. In the end, I was still nothing more than Gavin's girlfriend, an accessory to someone else's life. Mia and I, on the other hand, were simply coworkers. She knew nothing about my past, and I didn't have to prove anything to her. I could just be myself. We should catch a live show sometime, Mia said. There's always something playing around here. Sure, I said. That evening I stood by the window of my apartment and looked outside for a while. The oak leaves gleamed beneath the streetlights. I opened the photo library on my phone and found the old pictures of Gavin and me. I didn't delete them. Instead, I created a separate album, moved every photo into it, and buried it at the bottom of my library. Gavin sat across from Vanessa in a coffee shop. Did you tear up the deed? He asked. Vanessa froze. What deed? I don't know anything about it. I never touch your things when I'm at your place. Her eyes flicked to the left as she spoke. Gavin had known her for more than 20 years. Ever since they were kids, her eyes had always flicked left when she lied. He didn't call her out. He got to his feet. I have my answer. Then he turned to leave. Vanessa chased him to the door. Gavin. He stopped. Are you thinking about that night again? Her voice changed. The wounded, clingy tone disappeared, replaced by a sharp edge. You chose to drink that wine. Did I force you? Gavin didn't turn around. He opened the door and walked out. Once he was outside, he drew in a deep breath and stood for a moment with his back against a tree beside the road. 3 months ago he had drunk the wine. He had ordered the condoms. Vanessa had asked whether she had forced him. She hadn't. He could have stood up and walked away then, but he hadn't. On the Friday of my second week at the firm, I saw Gavin in the lobby as I was leaving work. He stood beside the glass doors in a dark gray coat. Mia was walking beside me. She followed my gaze and lowered her voice. You know him? Yeah, a friend. You go ahead. Mia didn't ask any questions. She nodded and left. I walked over to Gavin. I wasn't surprised or angry. I simply asked, what are you doing here? I wanted to apologize in person. His voice sounded rough. For what? He opened his mouth but no words came out. You can't even say what you're apologizing for? I looked at him. Or do you think one apology is enough? He was silent for a moment before speaking. You saw the orders on my computer, didn't you? His voice was strained. That night at the Hot Springs Resort, she suggested we have a drink in the room and He paused. I made one stupid mistake. I looked at him. One stupid mistake? At dinner, you ate the crab she had already bitten into. Was that a stupid mistake too? You let her take the front seat and feed you nuts in the car. Were those stupid mistakes too? You didn't move away when she fixed your collar. Was that another one? He opened his mouth again but nothing came out. Everyone can see how much you care about her. That's not true. Gavin stood there, all the color drained from his face. You don't have to explain, I said. It's obvious how much you care about her. You two deserve each other. I stepped around him and headed for the exit. Nora, he called after me. I didn't stop. The night wind hit me as I walked outside. I pulled my coat tighter and turned into the convenience store on the corner. Rows of bottled water stood neatly inside the refrigerated case. I took one. Gavin remained where he was. He watched Nora disappear around the corner. He spent the night in Tampa. The next morning he checked out of his hotel and returned to the office building. He didn't go inside or wait for her. He simply stood across the street and watched for a while. At 8:30, office workers began streaming in and out of the building. He never saw Nora. He didn't know what time she started work or which direction she came from. He knew nothing about her life here. After 10 minutes, he turned and headed for the train station. On the train home, he suddenly remembered something Nora had once said. "We should visit another city together sometime." "Sure," he had replied. "Where do you want to go?" "Anywhere." "Then I plan it." She had actually put together an itinerary and sent it to him. It was a packed 3-day 2-night trip, complete with notes on which restaurants were worth trying. But he had said, "I'm busy right now. Maybe next time." He had no idea how long she had spent planning it. He had never even opened the link. After getting back to town, Gavin didn't go home. He went straight to the county clerk's recording office. At the counter, he asked how to replace a damaged property transfer deed. The recording clerk handed him a checklist and explained each requirement. This was what he should have done the day after the deed was destroyed. Instead, he had stayed at the emergency room with Vanessa. On his way back from the recording office, he ran into Ryan outside the apartment complex. Ryan was carrying a convenience store bag. He looked surprised when he saw Gavin. "Gavin, I haven't seen you around in a while. Where's your girlfriend? She hasn't been by lately." Gavin stopped. "She left," he said. Ryan's smile faded. "Left? Where did she go?" "I don't know." Ryan stood there, the plastic bag swinging slightly from his hand. After a moment he said, "I ran into her downstairs that night. She said she couldn't get in because the lock had changed. I didn't think anything of it, so I told her Vanessa was upstairs cooking. Looking back, I shouldn't have said that." Gavin said nothing. Ryan continued, "Vanessa really crossed a line with some of the things she did. Don't tell me anything about her from now on," Gavin said. Then he walked into the apartment complex. When he got home, he grabbed a trash bag and threw away everything Vanessa had left there. It was almost 10 at night when I left the office. The air was cool as I walked back to my apartment. The trip took only 15 minutes. After a few steps, I suddenly realized that I hadn't thought about Gavin in nearly a month. When was the last time? Probably the day I went to buy a comforter and saw a sheet set identical to the one at his apartment. I had frozen in front of the shelf for a few seconds before choosing a different set. I hadn't thought about him since then. I wasn't deliberately trying not to. He simply no longer came to mind. Once I passed my probationary period at work, I moved. My new apartment was a little larger than the studio I had been renting, and it had a small balcony. I bought a smart lock and decided to install it myself. The installer offered to come by, but I declined. I wanted to try it on my own. I removed the old lock, fitted the base of the new one into place, and tightened the screws harder than necessary. When I finished, I stepped outside and pressed my finger to the scanner. Fingerprint enrolled successfully. I listened to the message several times. It was a crisp, mechanical woman's voice, completely devoid of emotion. It sounded nothing like Fingerprint not recognized. That night outside Gavin's apartment, cold air had poured through the hallway window. I had pressed my finger to the scanner over and over, only to hear the same icy message each time. Now I was standing outside my own home. This lock recognized me. The following day, a package arrived for me at work. The return address was Gavin's apartment. It was a small box and weighed almost nothing. Inside was a key with a tag attached. The front read, "Yours is the only fingerprint registered on this lock. No one else's. You can come back whenever you want." Another message was written on the back. "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry." The handwriting was messy, as though he had rewritten it several times before finally settling on those words. I would never use the key, but I didn't throw it away. It wasn't a keepsake. It was proof that I had once loved someone with everything I had. Work became easier as I settled in, and Mia became my closest friend in Tampa. We went to see a live band together and stood for 2 hours, shouting until our voices went hoarse. After the show, we stopped at a food truck for tacos. The vendor recognized us by then. Spicy on both as usual? Yes, I said. Being remembered in such a stall way made me feel as though the city was slowly beginning to accept me. While we waited for our tacos, Mia suddenly said, "When you first got here, you looked like a cat caught in the rain. You're different now." "How am I different?" I asked. "Your eyes." Mia gestured toward her face. "You used to keep your gaze lowered. Now you look up." I froze for a moment, then smiled. She was right. Gavin walked into the title company. He handed the replacement deed packet to the employee at the counter. The employee reviewed the information and completed the notarization. Gavin stepped outside holding the newly executed deed and a manila envelope. The envelope weighed almost nothing in his hand. He remembered telling Nora, "Have her send it to me. I'll take care of the filing." He had genuinely meant to help her when he said it, but he hadn't followed through. He slipped the new deed into the manila envelope. Back at his office, he sat down, unlocked his phone, and opened his conversation with Nora. Her last message was still there. "Nora, no need." He stared at the words for a while, then closed the chat. The following day, another package arrived. It was a manila envelope with the title company's name printed in the upper left corner. Gavin Cole's name appeared in the sender field. My hands didn't shake as I opened it. Inside was a replacement property transfer deed. The paper was crisp and new, and the notary seal was sharp and clear. On the final page, Gavin had already signed the witness line. His signature was neat, each letter carefully formed. His handwriting was usually careless. He must have taken his time with this one. I read through the entire deed. The date, stated consideration, property description, and both parties' information were all correct. It was identical to the deed I had left on his desk. The only difference was that this one had no water stains, no torn edges, and no shoe print. I took the deed to the county clerk's recording office. I took a number, waited my turn, and handed over the documents. The recording clerk worked at the computer for a while, placed the recording stamp on my copy, and handed it back to me. "You're all set." I accepted it and looked at the recording information. The deed had been officially recorded. I didn't feel the overwhelming relief I had expected, nor did I feel like crying. I simply thought that it was done. This was finally over. From the day the original was mailed to Gavin, to the day it was destroyed, to the day the replacement arrived, the entire process had dragged on for months. Now it is finished. When I stepped outside the recording office, the sunlight was almost blinding. I stood on the steps for a moment, folded the deed and slipped it into my bag. My phone buzzed. "Mia, did you take the morning off? Are you coming back for lunch?" I typed 3 words. "Me. On my way." By the time I returned to the office, Mia had already picked up barbecue ribs for me. She remembered. I sat down, took a bite, and tasted the warm meat beneath the rich, smoky sweet sauce. "Good, right?" Mia asked. "Yeah," I said. I lowered my head and continued eating as sunlight streamed through the windows. Maybe the days ahead wouldn't be so bad. After all, I had already taken the hardest step.
This is Listening Novel. We appreciate you spending your time with us. If you enjoyed today's story, please like and subscribe for more stories, and stay tuned for what's next.